So renowned poet, sculptor and historian Professor Pikita Ntuli is calling for an end to the ongoing looting and violence. Professor Ntuli says the crisis has gone far beyond factional battles within the ANC and has now become a national emergency. He's also questioned the silence of some cabinet ministers since the violence began about 2 weeks ago. Let's bring in the Prof himself to elaborate on his insights. Professor Ntuli, great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time. I couldn't help but notice a tweet from fellow broadcaster and political analyst Lukhona Mnguni, I think it must have been yesterday, who is essentially calling on people in the country not to call for a state of emergency. His take is that because we don't have the leadership capability to handle that. Does he have a point?
He definitely has got a point. There is a very clear indication that there is a vacuum in leadership, in this country. First, on the side of the ANC, which is actually imploding, and as I said, it is turning up into a very national problem. The banning, the people dying, and all of this are happening. One would actually expect that the government would be setting up its own ministers to be in all the troubled areas and even the troubled areas where no problem is, in order to be able to prevent this. One, we ask a question: where is the ANC, youth league? Because in cases such as this, you deploy people like those because it is people of that age that are busy actually onto the road. And if the ANC Youth League is weak, who do you blame? Again, the leadership in itself. On the side of the Zuma faction, and if Zuma were to come up and to say, don't do this in my name, then we can see what would actually be happening. The silence of the foundation is condoning this. It is a very clear-cut thing that the Zuma thing is playing a very critical role. We are holding the country at ransom. The only thing for me that really made my day yesterday was to see the premier of Gauteng, David Makura, there with the people, urging the people to urge other people in order to protect our democracy. And it's the same thing that he had done during the xenophobia. His face was there, asking people within the ANC and outside the ANC who have got influence to make that influence heard in order to protect the country. But right now, we can have the state security things. I saw them having up a meeting. I thought they would be saying that we are deploying our ministers to do these things. The president has got the regular meetings or many meetings with people in the Council of Churches, with traditional leadership. We need to be having all of those people being mobilized actually to speak. Let the religious people speak. It is their people that are doing that. Let the chiefs, Amakosi, to speak, and it is with them. Where is EFF here watching? You'd expect that any leadership across the board, it's a national thing, would be asking for restraint. We are going to end up in a situation in which our economy is going to be devastated. People are going to be divided. The talk of a national emergency, we are talking now that we are moving over into a revolutionary state. Once we come over into a revolution, then we are speaking about the destruction of this country once and for all. And for it to recover will be a very, very difficult thing. So all the sacrifices that the people have made, who have died, the massacres, in Sharpeville, Nyanga, Kukuletu, Pisho, everywhere, would have been absolutely in vain because we do not have any leadership to identify the issues and then come up neatly and clearly.
Right.
A call for a national emergency of all stakeholders, as I said, the religious people, the traditional healers and leaders there. That's what the government should be doing to get the entire nation to be involved. So
to be clear, Prof, are we past the point of even asking whether or not the legitimacy of the leadership is at stake? As far as you're concerned, has that legitimacy already been tested and possibly have failed?
But when we see what is happening there, people looting with impunity, and we know that people are being combined to different parts of the country. Where do people get the resources to go and get buckets to load fridges and televisions and all of these things? Unless it's well coordinated with also people with finances in order to do that. So we are plunging the country into a revolution.
Mm. So much to be said about the leaders we actually saw on the ground, or the lack thereof. I only spotted Gauteng Premier David Makhura, who I think was somewhere in Soweto. Towards the latter part of the day, we saw Police Minister Pikita Ntuli in Alexander. It must be pointed out, though, that all of this happened after the looting had already taken place. What do we make of that?
I mean, if our intelligence was very neat and clear, then people would have been warned. So we woke up and we heard these things. And then what Pikita Ntuli responded as a police. David Makhura is his province. And he has done this actually before. He's always, when there's a crisis, as I said before, there actually, with the people. Where are the ministers? Why is it so silent that you hear absolutely nothing about any other person when we've got a crisis such as the one we see unfolding here and the world is watching?
Mm. There is talk in the Academy of situations that present what is called a permitting environment, right? There's been a lot said about how what is actually taking place across Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal is because there's a permitting environment for throngs of specifically young people who on any other day are idle to be able to be taking part in this. I mean, is that an indictment on, again, the leadership that we're discussing, or perhaps the much more macro conditions, like the gear policy that's been in this country for quite some time, and the ways through which it fails to, I guess, help those at the bottom of the barrel, for lack of a better term?
Don't touch me there on the issues of gear, because gear replaced RDP, Reconstruction and Development Program, which is a very neat and clear thing. What are we reconstructing? If we are reconstructing our economy, how are we going to do it? Who are going to do it? Reconstruct our education. Our education system, it was very problematic. What is it that we are developing? We got rid of it in order to get gear because we wanted foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is not going to come from Africa. It's going to come from white monopoly capital. And our policies encourage those white monopoly capital. Now what is getting worse, now the youth are now beginning to say that white monopoly capital doesn't give black people shares. Therefore, we are looting them, giving ourselves shares. We are building actually argument for a total uprising that has got to be met with total resistance. If at all we had the leadership capable of organizing people to forestall the demise of our country and our democracy.
Sure. The question, of course, is what happens next. You and I, as we speak, we've heard of possibly an Afrox plant in KwaZulu-Natal going up in flames overnight. Carnage continuing on some very busy routes in that province as well. The president, I imagine, is going to be kept abreast of these latest developments. What ought be his response, or are we even asking the right questions insofar as that is concerned?
I think you're asking very wrong questions. You'd be also expecting the president to be, somewhere there, just like, say, the premier and Krele. Let the people see the commander actually in chief showing direct actually concern about these matters. But that is not actually happening. So the crisis in our leadership means we are surrendering the country to a mobocracy that is going to paralyze all the efforts that we have done since we began our struggle for liberation.
Professor Pikita Ntuli, hope your words are landing in the right places. Appreciate your insights this Wednesday morning. Professor Ntuli, of course, a renowned historian and really an icon in the cultural sphere of South Africa. Thanks very much indeed.